Good evenings, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends. Welcome to ACM and welcome to our talk today. I'm Kevin Lam, Senior Curator of Chinese Art here at ACM, and I'm also the moderator and MC for this talk. This is the fourth talk held in conjunction with our Pagoda Odyssey exhibition. The first talk, we have got two wonderful speakers from Boston. The second talk, we have got a wonderful photographer from Singapore. And the third and fourth talk, we've got a wonderful professor, also from Singapore, Professor Puay-peng Ho. I hope you have visited the exhibition already. And let me know what you think about it. And I also want to take the opportunity here to thank the Guan Yin Tang Hocho Temple for the generous support of the exhibition and the talk. The talk today is titled Tales of the Tower, Legends and Representations of Chinese Pagodas. I have to take this, it's like a little bit long. I hope that I'm not getting it wrong. So it's my pleasure and honor to introduce our speaker today, Professor Puay-peng from the National University of Singapore. Professor Ho is the UNESCO Chair on Architectural Heritage Conservation and Management in Asia at NUS. He's a leading expert in architectural history and conservation with his main focus on Buddhist architecture and rituals of medieval China. And before joining NUS in 2017, he was a professor of architecture at the Chinese University of Hong Kong, where he also served as director of the School of Architecture. And in addition to being a scholar, Professor Ho is also a conservation consultant and architect, having advised on around 100 conservation projects in Singapore and in Hong Kong. Today's talk, Tales of the Tower, Legends and Representations of Chinese Pagodas. I think it is like a sequel to our previous talk. So last time, we had the privilege to have Professor Ho to give us a comprehensive overview about the development and evolution of the Chinese pagodas. This time, we are going to look at a more imaginative aspects. Professor Ho will explore with us about legends and representations of Chinese pagodas. So without further ado, I would like to invite Professor Ho on the stage. Thank you, Professor Ho.
Thank you, Kelvin. Thank you very much. It's wonderful to come back for the second talk in association with this wonderful exhibitions of pagoda models housed at ACM and curated by Kevin. This talk is a sequel, as Kevin said, to the previous talk. The previous talk, maybe I just run through a bit, was about the origin of pagoda, as well as the religious significance of pagoda. And so we did look at the earliest, or one of the earliest pagoda of King Ashoka from about 3rd century BCE, the Sanchi Pagoda, as well as we look at some of the Chinese pagodas, such as this one here in Shanxi in Yingxian, the Fogongsi Pagoda, which is dated to 1056. And we also discussed the architectural as well as Buddhist ideas behind the pagoda, meaning that every floor, every story, as you go up the pagoda, you have a different Buddha feel or Buddha Keska, and at every part you have different statues, and you perform venerations by circumambulations around the central altar, and the pagoda means a lot to the devotees, to the people who built the pagoda, as well as to the monks and believers of Buddhism. But this particular pagoda is also very interesting in the sense that the plaque that you see on the pagoda itself, it's a gigantic structure. It's the largest wooden structure in China, about 67 meters tall. And if you look at some of the plaque, you see that, maybe if I can have the pointer, please. Yeah, you can see that the plaque actually give us the, yeah. Oh, no, it's not on. gives us the idea behind the lofty tower. Look at the one in black and white, Tian Gong Gao Song, right? Meaning that the heavenly palace going all the way up. And that's one, 天上人间, 天上人间. So meaning that this is part of heaven and earth. It's a cosmic axis. But at the same time, this pagoda standing on a very flat Huabei plateau is a very, very good place to look at enemy coming over, right? And so it can also be named as a pagoda for watching for enemies, 廖地塔. And so many pagodas in the northern part of China perform that sort of function. We did ask the question last time when I talked, why build pagodas? What are the purposes? And one of the purposes, obviously, is to offer blessing, both for their, whoever donated this pagoda, in this case, of course, the emperors, giving them the kind of blessings for their parents deceased or for all the sentient being in the world. And that particular purpose can also be seen in some of the more modern pagoda, like this one here in Haw Par Villa in Hong Kong. The Haw Par Villa, like our Haw Par Villa in Singapore, was built by sometimes I have to struggle between Hokkien, Chinese, English, Cantonese pronunciation. Aw Boon Ho, right? That's a Hokkien pronunciation. That's the real name. So Aw Boon Ho built the villa in Singapore, and also as well as the one in Hong Kong. But in the Hong Kong one, he had this fantastic 7-story pagoda that's all in white concrete and beautifully decorated. And that is for remembering his brother who passed away a bit younger, Aw Boon Pao, and so the Ho Pao coming together. So you can see that he used a lot of classical language in the building of the pagoda, even though it is in reinforced concrete. And the inside of the pagoda, really fantastic circulation going up in this 45-degree way. Unfortunately, the pagoda is gone. It's demolished. I had the privilege to be the last one going up the pagoda because we did the measure drawing of this pagoda before it was demolished. And really, it's such a shame to really lose that pagoda. But in the pagodas in Singapore, still remaining, you have pagodas like this, 4-story, 5-story, top with a Buddha. Before that, the Buddha wasn't there. It was top with a proper roof. You also have memorial pagodas like this. And some of this would be to explain Buddhism or to have a large statue of the Buddha so that Buddhism can be spread through this particular villa or this particular garden. And these two will be for memorial for their parents and for Aw Boon Pao, who passed away in 1955. And the form of the pagoda is a mixture of the Burmese as well as modern form, and because both brothers came from Burma, China to Burma, to Singapore. And just this week, I saw this particular church, the bell tower of St. Joseph's in Upper Bukit Timah, redecorated in 1933 by Father Ting, and it's called the Pagoda Bell Tower. Even though it is a Catholic building, they call it the Pagoda Bell Tower. So there are many different ways to look at the pagoda, but I would like to turn our attention to the foreigners' gaze, the foreign travelers. When they look around, when they come to China, what did they see? This is one early travelers, not very early, 1900, and his name is Alfred Racuse, a French fugitive. he owed a lot of money. He went bankrupt. This is his pseudonym. And because he went bankrupt, he came to China. Right? He went to Hong Kong and went to China. And he took a lot of pictures and wrote this book, In the Land of Pagodas. And you can see the many, many pagodas that he described. Obviously, this is a casual look at pagodas. And pagodas, to him, it's an English-sounding name, but he's actually French. To him, the pagoda represents China, right? The most visible, the most significant, the most conspicuous architecture that he can find in traditional China in 1900. This is the pagoda. And so he called his book The Land in the Lands of Pagoda. But earlier on, much earlier on, when the Dutch mission came to China from Macau, going to Beijing, wanting to have an open access to the Chinese markets back in 1655 to 1657. Johann Nieuwhof came together with the mission, with the Dutch mission to China. And he was super, well, there's no photography at that time, so he did drawings and engraved them. And altogether, 150 engravings, drawings were in this particular book, published in 1657. And you can see the first gates that they came in was Guangzhou or Canton. And in Canton, you see the pagoda welcoming them. And every one of these pictures, or almost close to every one of these pictures, you have, as they sail inland from Canton all the way up to Beijing, you see them seeing pagodas after pagodas near the rivers. Right? And so whether it's in Ganzhou, or Ganzhou in Jiangxi, or Shaozhou in Guangdong province, you see all these pagodas. And one point he remarks that 3 gallant towers we saw upon the riverside as we sail along. By these towers, we might understand in what the famous condition this country had been. Right. Okay, had been, that's a bit sour, but how wonderful this country was, right? Obviously, I mean, he looked at the poorer side of China, but this is how he experienced China and the greatness of China, or the famous condition, as he called it, of China, dependent on these pagodas. And these images were also used by another traveler or architect, someone from Berlin, Ernst Boerschmann. Boerschmann was a very, very serious scholar, as well as an architect. In his book, in 1931, I will show you the book later, he actually did pick up all the images from Nieuwhof's engraving and describe them and use them to illustrate his book. So this is one of the few books that he published on Chinese architecture, Chinesische Pagoden. It is the third of the series of books that he published on Chinese religious culture and architecture. And so you can see that this is the third one, Band 3, about the pagoda. The first book was on Putuoshan, the architecture Guan Ying's island of Zhejiang, and the second one was on the ancestral halls and halls, and memorial halls, and so on. And the third one is this one, the pagoda. The first one was published in 1911. This one was published in 1931. And I happen to have the book, and I happen to have a flyer of the book. And you can see in the flyer, advertising the book, 中国之建筑美术与教化. Now, of course, the translation is a bit off. It should be 宗教, right? Or 宗教文化. But anyway, this is the book that he translated, 中国宝塔. And really fantastic. And he, at that time, in Berlin, was appointed the first and probably the only professor of Chinese architecture. I don't see anyone appointed professor of Chinese architecture to this day except for Boschmann. And in that flyer at the back, he had this Hongshan Baota from Baotongshi that at the back to illustrate his book. And one of my good friend, Edouard, published a book in 2015 about Boschmann's travel and his documentation methods. And he went into a lot of his archive. And so he did this on the various trips that Boschmann took to China. The first trip was in 1906 to 1909 for 3 years. And the last trip was 1931. That was the fourth trip. And the Pagoda book was supposed to be the first book. However, Boschmann did not, because of the war, was not able to publish the second book. And so you can see the second book here, published by the Warravens, consisting of the two sections that he did not include, the Tianning Shi Pagoda, the kind of compact eaves pagoda, as well as the Lama Pagoda, meaning the Tibetan pagodas. But this sketch was from Edouard's book, and this sketch was Boschmann's own sketch of page layout of the second book that he did not get to publish. Boschmann was an architect. He first came to China, to Beijing, as a attaché to the embassy. And so he was in Beijing first. And from 06 to 09, he traveled all around the country, all the way to Sichuan and down to the south and along the sea coast and back up to the north. And he was particularly interested in pagodas. And the reason why it took him so long as a third book to publish on pagoda, I feel, is about his own research. And he did spend a lot of time in researching. So these are some of the illustrations that he did, comparing different pagodas that he saw to the same height. He actually measured the heights of all the pagodas that he saw. And in the two books that he had, he must have about more than 100 pagodas covered in the two books. And you can see how serious he was, looking at every pagoda. And in the two books, he separated the pagodas by the form, by the materials. So there's one on the glaze pagoda, there's one on the Tibetan pagodas, there's one on the wooden pagodas, and so on. And so he had all this drawn up. And some of his sketches before he published with these sketches, really very, very for the architects, I think wonderful sketches comparing the form and sizes of pagoda. But he also had included his own sketch, like this one here, of a Puzhou pagoda, but also a pagoda of the iron pagoda of Pujisi in Kaifeng. This was a kind of leaflet or maybe an album leaf that he took and included in his archive. And so both the published archival materials or published leaflets, as well as his own drawings, he showed pagodas such as this that are more freestanding and really quite wonderful. He did a lot on this particular pagoda, Tianning Shi Pagoda, which is just outside the city of Beijing, and was built in, I mentioned this before, and we have this in our exhibition here, the wooden pagoda in our exhibition, but he did a proper drawing of this particular pagoda, and you can see that in the picture, very similar. He analyzed the pagodas, as you can see over here with all the notes and with the different directions and all the different decorations on the 8 faces of the pagoda, including doors and windows, and the description of the kind of decorative elements in this pagoda. And he also sketched out some of the some of these decorations on this lower floor with a wonderful representation of bodhisattvas here, as well as the guardians on the sides. And this is to compare the guardians that we see on the pagoda that is in the exhibition here. You can look very, very closely to see how they represented the guardians in a slightly different way, very Chinese way. Right? Kevin is smiling, right? In a very, very Chinese way. Right? But these guardians are supposed to be foreigners, are supposed to be Indian, with this muscle coming out and so on. But in this, they are more tame and more Chinese. He also included sections and details of the Lingyanshi Pagoda, which is a pagoda that I really want to study in Shandong. And you can also see that it's translated into publication in a page in his book with all the steps and all the calculations and the plan of this particular pagoda. But what is really fantastic is that he also included poetries. Poetries that he collected of the pagodas that he described. And these are the two different pagodas in two different parts of the book. One on Cirenshi Pagoda, which is the Great Wild Goose Pagoda, Da Yan Ta. And this one is in Yangzhou, Xiling Si Ta. And you can see he selected the poetry. Now, for Cirenshi Pagoda, there are thousands of poetries written, right, from the Tang Dynasty down the century. And he took one from Tang Dynasty, and he translated the poetry together with the Chinese version. I can't read the German, but I can only read the Chinese. And again, the idea that the pagoda came out, spurring out from the land, from the ground, and it's just like a magical pagoda rising up like a bamboo shoot, right, shooting up from the ground and going all the way up, reaching to heaven, and it became Heavenly Palace. So the reason why he chose this particular poem is not because the poet is famous. Well, he is famous, but I suppose because of what is described in the poetry. That the idea of the pagoda is not just something tied down to the ground, but soaring towards heaven. It's almost like a heavenly palace. And the four sides of the pagoda were built as if by the spirits. And the seven-story pagoda, obviously today the Great Wild Goose Pagoda is only five-story, but seven-story pagoda is like touching heaven. Right? And the same with the Yangzhou Pagoda, where you can look more than thousands miles away from the top of that pagoda. But at the same time, he also used the images from the Tusawan pagodas in this current exhibition. He got the images from Field Museum in Chicago and used those images as illustration. Right? He did all the sketches. He took a lot of photographs, but at the same time, he wanted to use the Tusawan images to compare, right? As a way of looking at the pagoda, as if presenting different facets of the pagoda. Right? The facet of the pagoda that he drew, the facet of the pagoda that he sketched, the facet of the pagoda that he photographs, and the facet of the pagoda that he measured and draw to scale, as well as the facet of the pagodas that were represented by the Tusawan workshop in the three-dimensional drawings, but taken as photographs from Field Museum, Chicago. And you can see this would be one that you see having the actual pagoda and the Field Museum's version, and all the rest Field Museum. And so that brought us to the exhibitions, the Tusawan's photographs and Tusawan's workshops producing the pagodas for the World Panama Pacific Exposition in 1915. And so this is a small catalog of the particular exhibitions where hundreds of pagodas models were sent from Shanghai to San Francisco in 1915, more than 100 years ago. right? Amazing. I mean, how you can, I mean, I don't know whether they have port worker strikes at that time, but imagine how to pack all these pagodas. Some of them are quite large, and it's all wood and quite fragile, all the way across the Pacific from Shanghai to go to San Francisco. Right? So what's the intention here? Why would they do this? Right? And there's a picture of a map of China and showing where some of these pagodas are from. Right? And you can see the coverage all the way from the north in Zili, which is obviously Hebei, the northern Hebei, all the way to Gansu, down to Sichuan, down to Yunnan, and down to Guangdong, covering almost the whole of China. Right. So the 2001 workshop picked up all the pagodas models from all across, right? And at this time, his book had not been published. So what information would the workshop have? What information would Father Beck have to instruct the children to produce some of these wonderful models? Right? That is really something that we need to ask ourselves. And you can see they lined up the models in the catalog, going by different provinces, the different pagodas of the different provinces all lined up. Some are more complicated than others, some are plainer, and so on. And then there's a speech that was given at that time, and the speech was probably prepared by brother Beck, perhaps, or Father Beck. The word pagoda is, of course, not Chinese, right? But the towers may have also, the English use of the word, however, is so well established that we may retain it without fear of confusion. Though it is less correct since the towers may have no religious connection. Right? As far back as their history goes, the Chinese have always had a weakness for building lofty towers. Well, that's quite amazing, right? More than 100 years ago, this is how the foreigners see us, the Chinese, right? We have a weakness for building high towers, right? We want to reach out to heaven. We want to reach out to like the Tower of Babel, right? We want to reach up to the sky. And so we have this weakness for building lofty towers. And that is not wrong, right? From the Western Zhou to the Han Dynasty, you see towers being built, right? Even though those towers are not as high as some of the pagodas in the later ages, they have been built, and they were built to reach out to heaven, to reach out to the sky. Most important cities have had 1, 2, or 3 pagodas within their walls. It is estimated that the largest size, there must be at least 2,000 in the 18 provinces. Right? I think this is an underestimation. An underestimation. Every province must have more than 400 or 500 pagodas, right? As we can see. And so this is totally underestimation. The religious purpose of pagoda has not remained throughout the time. There has been a slow change, and those change allows them to erect pagoda for other purposes. And some of these other purposes, according to him, is feng shui. So it is correct to say, I mean, this is totally correct. I think what I did in the first lecture was more or less before Song Dynasty, right? Before, say, mid-10th, 11th, 12th centuries. And that would be the period where pagodas were built for Buddhist purposes. Right? There might be a handful that were built for Taoist purposes, but mainly totally for Buddhist purposes. But in the Song onwards, but primarily in the Ming and Qing, pagodas were built, a lot of pagodas were built for feng shui reason. They protect the cities or district in their neighborhood, that they drive off bad influences and bring happiness and wealth to the people. So the author correctly pointed out that, yes, the pagodas were built by whoever, by rich donor, for protection, for warding off evil, and for providing happiness and wealth. The Ying Tower, meaning the Wen Bi Ta or Wen Ta, is to improve the feng shui so that people can, for all the students that can pass the examination. So this is the next section. The geometry, topography, land and water, spirituality and functionality. In Boschmann's book, you see a lot of these images. Pagodas standing like on top of the hill. Now, the Chinese never built on top of the hill. It is bad feng shui, super bad, right? Sorry if someone lives up on Mount whatever, right? Not Bukit Timah Hill, but whatever, right? But they never built on top of the hill, period, right? Unlike if you go to, say, Spain or Italy, you see a lot of hill towns, the church will be standing up on top of the hill, right? Because of the Christianity, you have to shine from the top of the hill. Only pagodas are from on the top of the hill, right? And you can see that in everywhere on the top of the hill, as well as by the water side, right? By the water side, I will show you more images of this, or by the side of the city. And everywhere I go, if I'm quick enough, I can shoot a picture of a pagoda standing up. And that relates to, obviously, feng shui, but also relates to topography. In the wide landscape of China, a pagoda standing up really tries to balance somehow the topography. But if we look at the spiritual attributes, these are the three types of pagodas that we see. One relating to feng shui, which is feng shui pagoda or shui kou, the water mouth. One relates to literary successes, which might be the literary brush pagoda, the literary peak pagoda, or the Kuei-xing pagoda, and one relating to subjugating evils, and so that would be pressing evil down. And you can see that as well by Boschmann and other writers lining up all the feng shui pagodas. They are very, very clear that some of these are not for Buddhist purposes, and so these are the Kuei-xing pagoda. And Alexander Williamson did this collection of not Buddhist pagoda. And for feng shui pagoda, many feng shui writings, especially in the Qing dynasty, says that if your county, if your village, if your town could not produce any successes in imperial examination, build a pagoda. Because you lack the pagoda, right? Build a pagoda. And the pagoda has to be higher than the mountain, then you will definitely be able to pass examination. And so thousands of pagodas up and down the country have been erected by different people, right? Pagoda such as this one here, which is really very tall, right? 13 stories pagoda, because this was built on the ground, and this is in Chongqing. You know, Chongqing has all these high mountains, so this has to be higher than other mountains, and therefore this pagoda was particularly high. And the other pagoda was for feng shui purpose, and that is for the water mouth. This is a very standard diagram of feng shui, how the qi, the universal breath, would travel from Kunlun Mountain all the way down to Singapore, right? Can be, but all the way down to wherever you are. And that mountain, you can find the vein of the dragon all the way down from Kunlun to where you are. And then you have to find waterway that goes around. And the waterway has to turn around. And at the turn here and the turn here, you have the water mouth, the mouth of the water. Right? And so the mouth of the water should be big. I mean, this is quite hard to do. Big as you come in, small as you go out, because water carries wealth. Right? Money will come in easily and go out very difficult. Right? So you can keep the money in your particular site, right? So this is the water mouth. And I've visited a few villages, and I've seen some having a pagoda at the one of these two water mouth or shui kou. Then obviously, according to the feng shui compass, the Logan, you have the directions. So usually the direction is Xun, which is here, that is in the southeast direction, or sometimes in Jia, which is here, which is northeast direction. So you have to put your pagoda in that direction. And this is just a selection of pagodas in Chongqing that I got from the website. There are at least 200 something pagodas just in Chongqing that relates to feng shui, right? And they are in, I picked Chongqing particularly because they are in wonderful position, right? At the confluence of two rivers, you have the pagoda here, you have pagoda on the top of the mount overlooking the village, and again by the side of Changjiang. All the way down the Yangtze River, you might have a few hundred pagodas, right? To subjugate the water as well, so that the water will not flood. And most of this pagoda, as you can see, is usually straight and empty inside, that you can really see right from the bottom all the way to the tip, to the top, right? Without any floors, because they are quite small, quite tight, right? And we have some of this in our exhibition here. And these two are literary pagodas from Sichuan and from Gansu. As you can see, for the literary pagoda, for Wenbi or for the literary's brush, the pagodas are usually very straight, very, very skinny, right? Built with bricks and has no particular extra decoration. Now, compared to the Tianning pagoda that we saw earlier, there's no relief carving at the bottom showing the story of the Buddha. But here you can see, right, just with the opening going up the pagoda. And sometimes they have floors, sometimes if they are narrow, there's nothing in between. We also have pagodas like this for Kuei-xing, and this is the same purpose, to have more people passing the examination. And they are built more or less like a pavilion, because sometimes you have Kuei-xing Ge, or the tower for Kuei-xing, and this is like Kuei-xing's Ge, more like a pavilion with roof eaves and slightly larger, octagonal or square. And this one is particularly interesting. This was unique, only one in the world. Having a pagoda like this, with a bottom built in 952, so that is closer to the at that time the northern influence from Liaoling, from Liao people came down, and so you have the same kind of base as in Tianning pagoda about 200 years later than this one, and then you have very, very tight eaves going up, but the eaves goes up and goes larger and larger, right? Usually the pagoda, you go up like a pyramid, but this one, it goes an inverted pyramid. So you have the eaves much larger, and then obviously the top was built in the Qing dynasty. So you have Si Bu Xiang, right? So it doesn't look like anything, pagoda, right? And we have a model here, right? I'm really quite happy that we have a model that the fame of the pagoda actually reached Shanxi from Anyang, which is in Henan, and you can see quite similar depiction, and even with all the relief sculptures over here, as you can see, right? And in 1772, a local governor put a plaque in that pagoda and called Wenfeng Chongxiu, right? Wenfeng Chongxiu over the entrance gate, and turned the pagoda from a monastery pagoda into a pagoda for literary peak, right? So it is for literary, and I suppose at that time, perhaps the fortune of the literates, the people, scholars going for examinations was not very good, and so he turned this into a literary pagoda, but quite fantastic. Now, one example from Hong Kong, in a village to the northwest of Hong Kong in the New Territories, which is Ping Shan. And this is a feng shui diagram of that village from the probably end of 19th, early 20th century. The village is surnamed Deng and Tang, and then it has a feng shui setup with protecting hill at the back and water in the front. This is more clearer with the ancestral hall in the center, the protecting hill at the back, the table hill at the front here, with the water running through, going out. Right. This is a measured drawings of the sites. You can see the ancestral hall here and some of the village houses, another village sort of forts over here, and then a pagoda was put here, right, which is described as literary pagoda over here. And the text that accompanied the diagram says that around the end of 19th century, the fortune of this village was not very good. Right? And a feng shui master came and saw that this site, because it's so open, wealth and good fortune for literary examination success all went out. Because this one goes out to the sea. And so the mouth is very wide, right? Very wide, too wide. So everything just flow out, right? Even though in the past, in the 16th, 17th century, the village produced a lot of good success, but not so good in the 19th century. And so they built a pagoda over here so that the pagoda is at the water mouth, but also serving as a literary pagoda. And so that is a village from nearby. The pagoda is somewhere here. This was an early pictures of pagoda. And now you don't see the cow here, obviously. So it's a 3-story pagoda, right? And in the only pagoda, the only proper pagoda in Hong Kong. And now you see a wonderful HDB at the back. And you have the pagoda, and then there's an MRT here actually. So this was taken earlier, before the MRT line, overhead line, just by the side. But it's a 3-story pagoda. Some say it might be a 7-story pagoda, but probably not. If you look at the writing on here, the pagoda is known as Ji Xing Lou, the tower that connects or that gather constellations. Right? So all the stars come together. Down below, the lights shining to Dou, and Dou refers to the Kuixing. Dou is the great deeper, right? The sky, the constellation in the sky, and so the light shining directly to the constellation of the great deeper at the bottom here, and up here is Linghan, meaning reaching the sky, reaching heaven, right? So it cannot be 7-story, right? So this is already the top. You already reach heaven, right? And this particular pagoda, you can climb up, right? So 3 stories, and this is the altar at the top here with the Kuixing and Wenchang over here on the particular altar. And this is included in the rubbings, the collection of archives of Boishman. So this is the Dou. This is the Dou Xing, or Kuixing. This is one that is has nothing to do with this, but just to show that Kuixing is always depicted like this. Right? And you can't see, you can see that one. The Dou is here, right? And the pen is here, the brush is here. Actually, I have one. I should have brought it with me. And it's a God governing examinations, governing success in examination. So praying to him will mean that, I don't know if any one of you taking a GCSE or whatever, right? Praying to Kuixing will give you success in examination, right? And so it's really quite nice to see this calligraphy. And the Dou is here, is the bushel. It's just for rice or for coins, for gold or whatever, right? So quite a nice pagoda. And quite a nice image, quite nice images here. This particular village in Sanshui in Guangdong is wonderful because it has all the 4 treasures from the scholar's studio, including the pagoda, which is the pen, the paper, the brush, the ink, and then the inkstone, right? And so all the 4 said to have been here. And so this I've not checked whether they have a lot of successors in imperial examinations. I suppose not too much, but this is the wish projecting to the pagoda. Right? But pagoda has a lot of facets. And this one is the pagoda in Hangzhou, in the West Lake. And it's known as the Leifeng Ta. Leifeng is the hill at the back. And so this is a West Lake. This is Hangzhou city itself. And in the West Lake, obviously, at some time, you start to have this 10 beautiful scenery of the West Lake. And that includes the Leifeng Ta at the back, at the south here, and then Baochu Ta in the north. Right? And this pagoda was first built in the 10th century for the king. Right? I'll come to that later on. So in the Qing Dynasty engraving, you have the Leifeng Pagoda, the Thunder Peak Pagoda with the western sun and facing the West Lake over here, as well as the sunsets of woodblock prints from the earlier period. Look at all of them looking at the pagoda. Even at that time, the pagoda in 1603 is already dilapidated, right? It's something like this. But earlier, this is a West Lake scroll, a panoramic scroll from Song Dynasty. Li Song, the southern Song, he lives in Hangzhou or around Hangzhou, and he painted this with the pagoda over here, housed in the Shanghai Museum. And this is our pagoda in the exhibition. Right? So when you go to see this pagoda, don't sneer at it. Right? It looks really terrible. And especially in this particular representation, it's very, very ghostly. Right? But don't sneer at it. It used to look like this. Right? And over time, fire consumed the wooden outer body. So the brick body inside was retained. And then slowly it got disintegrated. But even at this sort of condition, in the early 20th century, the famous literati, poet Xu Zhimo, writer and romantic par excellence, wrote about this pagoda. Right? He wrote 3 poems on this particular pagoda. And this is one on the shadow of the pagoda. He said, all the other scenery, all the other beautiful scenery, I don't care. I only care for this shadow coming down on the lake itself. I can give up my life, even for this particular shadow, that I can sit quietly, look at the pagoda. In the moon, the shadow comes out on the lake, and I can really enjoy that particular scenery. But the pagoda is also associated with a very famous tale of the white snake. Right? All of us Chinese knew about this, right? Because it's one of the most famous vernacular story, right? That was formulated over many centuries and probably took shape in the Qing Dynasty. And that relates to a white snake and a green snake. And the white snake, because she was saved by Xi Xian, the protagonist here. And so she became a beautiful lady and married Xi Xian. And the green snake became the mates, right? And but the monk Fa Hai saw that and saw Xi Xian getting skinnier and skinnier because he married a not ghost but kind of wrong spirit, and so he did something to want to capture the 2 snakes. But the 2 snakes sent water and waves to cover the in Zhenjiang the Jingshan, right? You can Jingshan also has a pagoda here. But then eventually Fa Hai won and put the 2 ladies under the Leifeng pagoda. Right? So it's a sad story. I mean, it's a romantic story, but sad, right? Or maybe not sad because the evils were subjugated, and the pagoda was supposed to be a pagoda of Buddhist significance, became a pagoda not only of feng shui, not only on scenery, but also a pagoda to subjugate the evil. And this is a modern version, like a rocket. Even Xu Zhimo himself in 1923, wrote about this story, yeah, and said that this is the grave of Bai Liangliang, right, the white snake, and she's so romantic, but she suffered so much. She wanted to marry a Shixian, but 没出息, right? Shixian is really terrible. I mean, that guy has no guts, right? Essentially, right? And because he had no guts, he believed the monk and put his wife under a container. And then that container was put under the pagoda for more than thousands of years. So sad. So it became a sad story. And the pagoda was a sad story, right? But obviously, something happened to the pagoda almost 100 years to the date, to today, right? 1924, September 25th, the pagoda collapsed. And the reason why the brick pagoda collapsed, probably because people took away the bricks or whatever, or maybe heavy rain, or the whole wood sort of dilapidated pagoda all collapsed with all this, look at it, all these bricks covering the place. And then Lu Xun, another great leftist writer, wrote just a month after the pagoda collapsed. I heard it, I did not see it. But from very young, the first story I heard from my grandmother was about this white snake and this green snake. And because of that, I see the significance of this pagoda, right? However, I don't like it, right? I feel that the pagoda was terrible. Because this pagoda is built to put this white snake under, right? Now it collapsed. How happy can I be? Right. He wrote this, right? This is the first essay that he wrote. And a few months later, he wrote a second essay again. And then he said, it fell down. So the pagoda for him, as a leftist writer, writing in modern Chinese, to him, the pagoda represents the old society, represents the bondage of the old society, represents the suppressiveness of the old society and the ugliness of this old society. It should be broken, right? So he's happy that it's broken. We need someone to destroy, and that someone who destroys may have the light of idealism. And then a few months later, Xu Zhimo wrote about this. I cannot seeing Lei Feng no more. I can't see Lei Feng anymore, right? He wrote 2 poems on this particular pagoda, and now in 1925, 1 year later, he saw this. This was when he returned from Cambridge, when he was divorced, when he was chasing after Liang Qichao's daughter. No, sorry, not Liang Qichao. Liang Qichao's daughter-in-law. Yeah, but not married at that time yet, right? And it was a time when he had this struggle, right? And he said it was a grave, but now it was a very, very large grave, right? And it was already being destroyed. And this was suppression. This was also to bury it, right? And so Lei Feng Pagoda no longer exists and buried in our memory. It's our love, but no more. It's now in our memory. And again, I think he is similar to Lu Xun, saying that, yes, the pagoda represents a wrong act of the monk who broke away this wonderful love story between the white snake and Shixian. And the lovely story was broken by the monk putting this pagoda on the white snake. So it's buried, and it's buried in our memory. And our great female writer, Zhang Ailing, wrote about this as well. She wrote in English in 1963, the fall of the pagoda when she was in the States. And she wrote this and referred to this title, Pagoda, Lei Feng Pagoda. And this is the introduction by David Wang. And in the introduction, he looked at this pagoda and looked at the condition of Eileen Zhang or Zhang Ailing at that time, and say that it was to observe the ghostly forces unleashed amid the ruins of the fallen pagoda, and most unexpectedly to celebrate an eerie, desolate atmosphere that has enthroned the Chinese land ever since. And that is about her herself, that the fall of the pagoda really projects a kind of discourse, the introverted tendency, a move to expand, not through the increasingly efficient use of new input, but through the replication of the inherited patterns of thought and so on, and looking inwards, and to say that it was for her a bondage of her life, of her, again, the old society, and leaving the whole society, breaking away from that bondage, and also leaving China itself, the disenchantment of China. And the pagoda was excavated in 2001, after so many years of desolation, there's so much imagination, and they found the actual purpose of the pagoda, which is for Buddhist worship. And both in paper form that's stuck inside this hole, thousands of this in the bricks of the pagoda as a kind of offering. And here it says the king Qian Chu did this and make this particular sutra and make this particular stupa or the pagoda, and so that for prayer for everyone. And then the engraving on the inner wall of the brick wall, also of Avantasaka Sutra for the protection of people, and so on. And then in the earthly chamber or the palace, you find the Buddha seated, touching the earth with beautiful dragon stand. And in there, you have the Ashokan stupa with the decoration of the Jataka story, but containing, supposedly, no one dared to open this, containing the curl hair of the Buddha, right? The relics inside. So it was made for the significance, right? It was broken before this can be known. We guess it. Right? It was written in the history. But then we change the story and we make it into one of the 10 scenes of Westlake. But then now it was open, and you return back to the idea that this pagoda was for the longest time a Buddhist pagoda. Wow, so some postulation. And then in 2002, Guo Daihen, a professor in Tsinghua, unfortunately she passed away during COVID, a friend of mine, designed the pagoda. And she designed it so that the underground chamber would not be disturbed. And so she used steel trusses supporting a steel structure with all the elements in copper so that it can be light. Right? So all the elements in copper, and you can see that there's a structure covering the remains of the pagoda. So it was from this to this, and it was still the scene. I only have two more minutes, but I have one more example. Can I go through it quickly? So the last example is the great Bao'en monastery, the monastery of recruiting blessings in the city of Nanjing. This is the early 6th century capital city, the palaces and so on, and the central axis, the outer gate here, and it was built just outside the outer gate. As I said in the last talk, in the early years, pagodas cannot be built, or monastery cannot be built within the city itself, so it is just immediately outside the outer gate. So this was a site of several monasteries that were built from the 6th century onwards until the newest from 2007 to 2015, the newest creation done by three friends, Zhu Guangya, Chen Wei, and Han Dongqing, all three professors at Dongnan University. But this particular pagoda in this monastery is super well known. It's called the Great Porcelain Tower by Nieuwhof. Remember Nieuwhof? I started with him. And in his depiction, you can see how lofty it is. Right? This is one of the only images that Nieuwhof engraved that has the pagoda right in the middle of the monastery, right in the middle of the composition. Right? Most of the others are just something in the landscape, right? Some sort of structure in the landscape. This one is the greatest one. And so the porcelain tower. But not only Nieuwhof, many other visitors, foreigners, all depicted this particular pagoda, right? In this very, very exaggerated maybe, but fantastic view, right? So remember, the gates of Nanjing is here. This is just outside the gate, the south gate, and this is facing west, and this is the east. I mean, this is all exaggeration. I mean, the east is all flat, right? So it's all exaggeration. But with the mountains to help to make this look even loftier, right? So pagoda, right here, another foreign visitor saw this as the tallest tower. And Nieuwhof himself said that in the middle of the plain, right? No, it's all plain, right? No hills. Stands a high steeple or tower made of porcelain. At that time, he called the pagoda tower. So all the towers, right? The name tower came from him, which far exceeds all other workmanship of the Chinese in soft and skill. Some of this English translation was not very, very clear, by which the Chinese have declared to the world the ingenuity of their artists. Right? And so it was a fantastic pagoda that he saw. 1650s, the pagoda was still there. The pagoda was gone in the 19th century, and so he would have seen the pagoda himself. This tower has 9 rounds, meaning 9 floors, 184 steps to the top. Each round is adorned with a gallery full of images and muses with very handsome lights on the side. The outside is all glazed over and painted with several colors, green, red, and yellow. The whole facade consists of several pieces which are also artificially cemented, as if the work were all of one piece. Round about all the corners of the gallery hangs little bells, which make very pretty noises when the wind jangles them. The porcelain tower was crowned with a pineapple, right? Not pineapple, pineapple, right? So it's like a pine, right? Or an apple, right? Not pineapple that we know, which, as they say, was made of gold. From the upper gallery, you may see not only over the whole city, but also over the adjacent counties to the other side of the river. I don't know what it is, which is the most delightful prospect, especially if you observe the vast circumference of the city, reaching with her suburb to the riverside. So this is what he saw and how he described this particular pagoda. And this is from the Tusawan workshop, the same representation. And the Tusawan script mentioned this, but dismisses this, right? Saying that, oh, it's not, it's a lot of ornamentation, because it's so famous, I have to say a few words. I don't want to do that, but because it's so famous, I have to say a few words. And they say, well, construction is not any uncommon. I mean, it's quite common. Well, it's covered with glazed bricks, yes. This is written after the pagoda had collapsed, right? This is another pagoda that collapsed. And he came with all these different examples of pagoda with glazed bricks. And in Boschmann's book, on the inside cover of the book on the Pagodan, he had this pasted, a color image of the pagoda. This is almost like a talisman, and they sell this for visitors to the monastery. You can bring it back, buy it, bring it back, and stick up in your house, in your room. Right? So the whole view of the pagoda, and he obtained a few of this. This is one that is in color that he reproduced in his book, and it's very, very similar to this that obviously he couldn't see the pagoda. Obviously the Tusawan or farther back could not see the pagoda because it had already been collapsed. But this is what they saw, and also this one. And this one, Kevin blew up so large on the wall itself. It's almost like a talisman. But what they saw, Boschmann, he used this as an illustration of this particular pagoda, and he also put in an image of this, which is the top at the top here, right? This remains. It's about 2.5 meters, 3 meters wide. So this is remaining from the pagoda itself. And he gave how many pages of his book? 20 pages almost to this particular pagoda that wasn't there. Because it was so famous, he did all the research on this pagoda. And really, he spent so much time working on this. And obviously, the pagoda was not there anymore. And people were trying to reconstruct the pagoda in all the reincarnation. Chang'an by Liang Wudi, one of the most devout Buddhist emperor of all time, from the 6th century, he built Chang'an, and he is said to have a relic of the Buddha in that particular monastery. Tianxi built by a monk, Ke Zhen, and he brought back a lot of remains, relics, including the relics of Xuanzang, the monk who went to India, the top, right, to this particular monastery, and it's called Tianxi. But it became so important during the Mongol period. It has this very, very long name. And then Zhu Di, the emperor, second emperor of Ming Dynasty, built this particular monastery for requiting blessing of his father and of his mother. Very similar to this one here, built by Sui Wendi in Chang'an, wooden pagoda, as well as Sui Yangdi for his father Sui Wendi at the corner of Chang'an, which is obviously gone except for this base. So people were working on how to rebuild or how to reimagine the pagoda, including the white glazed tiles and all the glazed tiles on the side. But if you look at this, the wall are all glazed with white glazed tiles or glazed bricks, and then the opening as well as on the sides you have this. And this were uncovered not far from the monastery itself to the west, in a village that is said to be the kiln site for producing all these pieces. Right? And it is said that this represents the second set. So these are the spare. Well, the emperor was very, very clever, or the craftsman. I mean, emperor probably are usually quite stupid, but Zhu Di is quite clever, obviously. Right? But the craftsman actually produced a second set, and sometimes they say there are third sets. Right? So that, I mean, we architects cannot do that now. Once one is cracked, you can replace it with a second set or with a third set, right? They uncovered the second set at the kiln site, and so you can see them excavated and put together in the City Museum in Nanjing, and some of this fantastic the Garuda that we know, the Makara, the flying horses, and so on. Then they went to excavate the sites. These are the excavation of the sites. This slide was given by Chen Wei, and then the actual base of the pagoda from the second monastery, which is in the 11th century, and they uncovered the underground chamber, again with the Ashokan pagoda, or the Ashokan stupa, with the Jataka story, the previous life of the Buddha, as well as supposedly inside the true relics of the Buddha, of his skull, the true body of the Buddha. Right? Beautiful, beautiful. And this is the skull, they said. And inside these are very small, I mean, it's 3 cm. Right? And inside the gold and the silver coffins and sarcophagus. And these are some of the things that they uncovered on the site itself, the ground, and also a model of the pagoda in the newly built pagoda. They constructed the new pagoda in glass. They did not recreate the main hall, but cover it as a glass box. This is the central axis, or was the central axis that they uncover of the monastery, and they built this. The same with the Leifeng Pagoda. They built this steel structure over the remains of the underground chamber, and then they built this in steel and glass, painted with the decorations on the glass facade itself. And you can take a lift all the way up and walk up, and from up there you can see the whole monastery itself. This would be the first hall, the entrance hall, the first hall, the gates of Nanjing here, and the south gates over here, with the outer Qinghai River over here, and the cloister of the monastery. Looking down, you can see the structure in steel, and underground you have this glass cover of the remains. And they built a wonderful ceiling over it, with the Ashokan stupa seated up here, and then a Buddha image at the top. And at night, it will be lit up with different colors, so as to imagine what it might have been like with all the colored glazed tiles. And this is what you see in a day. Right? And so, even for this last example, you see how the ideas went overseas and back with the overseas travelers, foreign travelers coming and to see this as one of the world wonders because of this tall structure, about 70 meters tall, with this wonderful glazed bricks with 3 colors and white, with the light shining over, and it's like heaven. Right? And this spurred the search for Chinoiserie in the West. In Europe, William Chambers built a pagoda in Kew Garden in the 18th century after all these stories. Right? All this imagination of the eastern land, of this glorious pagoda, became that. And this is a contemporary interpretation of that. Right? They are done. This is done by my friends, so I'm not going to say whether I like it or not. And don't ask me that question, right? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Ho, for another wonderful odyssey around China with pagodas. And thanks a lot for bringing up Ernest Boschman, because in fact, this exhibition owes a lot to his book. In a lot of captions, you see we find old photos of those pagodas that are represented with the models. A lot of them is from Boschman's book. A lot of them is from that book. Thanks for bringing that up. And also your discussion about the poems that he selected, I think it's quite an interesting thing, especially the one that you talk a little bit about the Dayanta. What I know is that at that occasion, when that poet wrote that poem, there were 4 other poets with him. All of them wrote a poem. And what I know is that is not the best poem. It's the second best. But he selected the second best, just to talk about how tall, the architectural structure. So thank you very much, Professor Ho. So I think we still have some time for discussion, for Q&A. So if you have questions, raise your hands and let us know.
Thank you all for coming on Tuesday nights.
Yeah, it's like really a wonderful turnout for me. I really don't imagine that we have such a crowd on a Tuesday evening.
Yeah, there's a question at the back.
Thank you so much for your wonderful lecture. Really interesting. I have a question about its function. You mentioned about it has been developed as a container of the Buddha's relic, right? Actually, it should be associated with Buddhism, but later you focus on the feng shui, such as literally peak tower. In that case, do you think Are they connected with Buddhism in China? Or who were the patron for this literary peak tower?
Yeah, there's no connection at all. Right? It's just a structure that they feel quite suitable because of the height, because of the weight, for feng shui purposes. Right? In feng shui, you want something to be solid, and you want something to be flowing. Right? And this represents the solid part. And there's no direct reference that I can find to relate the pagoda to feng shui in the earlier literature. And so it is probably, I mean, I can only guess, it relates to the bricks, to the weight, to the shape, to the height of the pagoda. And so there's no images of Buddhist inside this feng shui pagodas. Yeah.
Thank you.
And maybe the writer is correct. We have a weakness for building tall towers.
All right, thanks very much for your lecture. I have a question regarding non-Western perspectives on Chinese pagodas. I suppose in particular from the Muslim world, and also how about Muslim Chinese pagodas? I think ACM has one replica of
Yeah.
just such a
I
pagoda.
hope another lecture will cover that. I'm not covering that, but indeed, I mean there's also a model here, as well as in Guangzhou there's a pagoda. I mean pagoda can also be used as a lighthouse, can also be used as a minaret. The same sort of architectural language, perhaps, or more rounded actually. Yeah. No, I've not covered that part. Yes.
Hi. I was wondering whether the different styles and architecture of the pagodas, right, are they influenced by which Buddhist school that was the one who built it, that kind of thing? Whether there's any connection?
There's no particular Buddhist school for the shape of the pagoda. To me, I think they are all craftsmen's creation. The roundness, I think, is something that they want to emulate. But in the Tang Dynasty, there's a lot of square pagodas. But when you have the hexagonal or octagonal or even 12-sided pagodas, it's to simulate the roundness. And in the Tang Dynasty, there are round pagodas as well, but not a lot. And so the shape and the decorations are very not quite. There's no real connections, except in Dunhuang and other cave temples. You see square pagodas with decorations on top, meaning that relief stories of Jataka or the Buddha images on all four sides. Yeah. So no particular school. Yeah. And it's relating more to the merit seeking. So to build a pagoda, like I said the last time, was to gain merits for this life and for your future lives. Last two questions, I think.
Yeah. That one first.
Thank you very much. I'm curious to know a little bit about the levels, the odd levels of pagoda. Is there any meaning? And also the octagonal, because it became the most popular one. If there's anything related with the number 8, the symbolism of it, or it's just a coincidence? Or?
Well, I mean, of course, 8-sided or octagonal will relates to the directions, the orientations very well, the cardinal directions and the other 4 directions. So that relates to feng shui very well. So for feng shui pagoda, I think octagonal quite a lot, but they're also hexagonal. So in Buddhist usage, I think the roundness of Shanghai, for example, in India, would be the kind of pagoda that they wanted to emulate. And even in Tibetan pagoda or the Burmese pagoda, they're all rounded. And so I think that's one reason for me, for them. And for square pagodas, I think it was built with timber. And so the earlier pagodas are square because it's easier to build with timber. And slowly they develop into different sided pagoda. Yeah. And the number of levels, I think they are usually odd numbers because of the yang. Pagoda is looked at as a yang symbol, and so not yin and yang, right? So yang is odd numbers, so there are always 3, 5, 7, 9 stories. You know.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Really? Thank you for a wonderful talk.
Thank you.
I apologize first for being a Chinese who does not read Chinese and who has not yet visited the exhibition. But the reason I'm here is because I was hoping you would talk about the Yellow Crane Tower.
Oh.
Because as a Chinese who speaks no Chinese.
No, I because this is in conjunction with the exhibition, so it's just a pagoda, yeah. But the Yellow Crane Tower has been there for, I mean, how many iterations, right? So the one that we see is a modern one, and today. But this is very similar because we like to build tall, and this is partly to view out. So that's a Yellow Crane Tower, yeah.
So you don't know anything about the specific construction through the ages of the original Yellow Crane Tower?
Well, no one has ever had the chance to understand the original construction. Now, for some of this, the last two examples, because of excavation, they can find the dimension and so on. And so for Yellow Crane Tower, that wasn't possible. Yeah.
Yeah, just to add, I mean, yeah, I think that's like one of the challenges that we have, you know, when we are working on this exhibition. Because a lot of these pagodas, you know, now we think, okay, they are landmarks. But in fact, a lot of them, we couldn't actually find much about their origin. We don't know. I mean, there are a lot of like legends, a lot of myths around these about these pagodas. Oh, yeah, it was built in the Tang Dynasty with what emperor? But then, I mean, that kind of like legend passed on generations and generations. But with a lot of like modern research, we discovered that in fact a lot of them were built much later, and then they were keep modified and restored, and you know, sometimes completely torn down and rebuilt. So what we are trying to do in this exhibition, we try to also kind of like tell you when the pagodas were built, but at the same time, you know, for example, like the Anyang Pagoda. I mean, it was, as Professor Ho said, you know, it was like a 细不像. It doesn't look like anything. Because it was, you know, the foundation was built in some time, and then, you know, the different layers were built in later time, and then, you know, the engravings were done at a later time, and then the finial was done even later, and then it was declared as a literary tower in the Qing dynasty because of some practical needs. So yeah, I mean, that's like one interesting thing about these pagodas is that we can keep talking about them. You know, you can't actually arrive at a conclusion. And I think that's the same for the Yellow Crane Tower as well. I mean, in this particular exhibition and also in Professor Ho's talk, we don't really talk a lot about this because this is like in conjunction with our exhibition. That's like more about Buddhist pagodas. In fact, most of the pagodas in this collection, except one, most of them are somehow related to Buddhism or the feng shui. The only one that is not related to religion is in the Christian art gallery. That's the Guangyue Lou in Shandong. So that's like the reason why we put that particular model in the Christian art gallery, because it has nothing to do with religion. Yeah, and so thank you very much. I think thank you again, Professor Ho, for this wonderful talk. And yeah, before going, I would like to share a little bit with you about our next event. In November, 2nd of November next month, we will invite Professor Thomas Koemans from Belgium to share with us his latest research about Aloysius Beck, who is the one who supervised the making of all the pagodas in this exhibition. So if you love this exhibition, or if you want to know more about the exhibition, don't miss this. We are going to hear a lot from Professor Koemans. He did a lot of archival research in Shanghai, and he will tell us a lot of stories about this strange German guy who studied in France, who somehow came to Shanghai and got a very beautiful Chinese name. his Chinese name is Ge Cheng Liang, to inherit Zhuge Liang, to do the follow. I mean, I don't know who got this wonderful, beautiful Chinese name for him. I wish someone got this for me. So, I mean, Professor Kuhlmann's, his research will be about this very interesting German figure. So, yeah, this will be in the 2nd of November, 2024.
Also a good friend of mine.
Yeah, and also you will also see Professor Ho as well, because he will be a discussion in that talk. And also, thank you. So we appreciate your feedback. If you have anything you want to tell us about this talk or what you want for our future events, please let us know. And thank you very much. Thanks for coming and good evening. Thank you.